today I had an idea and I wanted to talk about 2013 and like leading up into how I got clean, why I got clean in the first place. And people ask me that all the time. They want to know two things, actually, really. Like, if I came from such a good family, you know, my dad was RCMP and my mom was like, she like worked for CSIS for a little while at F Division in Regina, like listening to people's phone calls and shit like that, like just some crazy shit. Like, my parents are they're good people, right? And then to this day, they're really good people and they follow the law. And my mom's still like, I bug my mom all the time. I tell her, like, you should smoke some weed sometime and settle the fuck down. And she's like, no, I don't think I could ever do that. Because she believes in the old Nixon fantasy that, you know, war on drugs and shit like that. And I've had a fascination with the Hells Angels for a really long time. And I got a 99 Dyna and a 99 Sporty and an 02 Vulcan, and I love working on bikes, and I have like lots of buddies that are in clubs, and one day I hope to be in a club, you know, but my mom said, if you ever join the Hells Angels, I'll fucking disown you. But they were around during like the 80s, the 70s, 80s, and 90s when the Popeyes were transferring over to the Angels, and there's that big fucking war. And because my dad had so many friends in Quebec, that like it's one of those topics that you just don't get into with my family members. But that life of outlawism, that the old school, you know, back when motorcycle clubs used to do a lot of like touring around, they were, you know, transients, ride their bikes to the next destination. You know, they'd have their home place or whatever with tenting and stuff like that. And I love that shit, right? And that's why I became a hitchhiker. My addiction was way too bad for me to ever become a biker because I could never get a license, like a motorcycle license, or fucking afford to buy a motorcycle for that matter. And Jesus, fuck that road. So I just ended up, you know, hitchhiking around, and my addiction was so bad that I did that for such a long time, but I never really felt like I wanted to stay in one place for too long. Anyway, so how did you get to where you are? Because of the family that you had? Well, mostly just because I didn't fucking want any of that shit, right? Like, I wasn't, at heart, I'm a good man. I just don't like following fucking rules. I don't give a fuck about your rules, right? Like, every day is just, I do whatever the fuck I want, and if I agree with your rule, I'll follow it because my moral code says that I agree with it, not because you fucking tell me to. Anyway, that's kind of why I became who I was, right? And that's why I had the addictions I did. Well, I mean, addiction is a complex issue and a complex disease. I mean, there's not one real answer, but it's why I lived the way I did. It's because my moral code was different than yours, right? Did whatever I wanted. But why I got clean, completely different story. I got clean because of a factor of a couple of different reasons. I had moved to Humboldt, Saskatchewan to be closer to my then 4-year-old daughter, I think, 3 or 4-year-old daughter, and but I was still using really heavily. And what they say is like, why don't you just quit using for your kids? It's not that fucking easy, man. Like, it's a disease of not just of the mind, but it's a disease spiritually. Like, it corrupts your moral instincts, right? Like, it turns off your prefrontal cortex, which your decision-making center, and you fully just live off your limbic system, which is like your raw emotion, and you just want to feel good. You're chasing that dopamine effect, right? Like, you don't have a thinking, you have no conscious on who you are in reality, right? Like, you just used to use. Every once in a while, your limbic system shuts up and your prefrontal cortex kicks back in, and you realize that you're a piece of fucking shit, and then all of a sudden the shame and the guilt comes in, and then you use more to shut off your I fucking give a fuck feelings, right? Anyway, so moved to Humboldt to be closer to my daughter. One day I got really drunk, and my daughter ran away from me, and she said, she goes to her mom, I don't like it when Steven acts like this. I didn't even know my kid knew my name was Steven, and that hit me in the heart, right? And then, but while I was living in Humboldt, so now I have that shame and guilt. My daughter fucking hates me. She knows my real name. I don't know how. Probably because people bitch about me and my family because of how bad I was. And then, and on top of that, I was living in a house that was really, a lot of violent people were coming in and out of there. And the way that I remember it was, at first, no one knew how I got there because I had hitchhiked from Vancouver back to Regina. And in Regina, I was staying with my buddy Don, and Don had let me stay there for a little while, but because I wanted to be closer to my daughter, I was like, thanks man, I gotta go. And ended up trying to live in Munster. And Munster, I got kicked out of that place in one day because I got so hammered. I was fucking trying to fight neighbors in the town. My dog got out, and I was just being a fucking mess. So then I bumped into a guy in Saskatoon. I don't even know how I got to Saskatoon. Why was I there? I was supposed to be living in Munster. Anyway, so now I'm in Saskatoon, and I run into this guy, this Ryan guy, and he's like, oh man, I live in Humboldt, why don't you come live with me? So I fucking go over there, and he introduced me to this Monique girl, and she's living in this like flop house place, and the first night I met her, like we ended up smoking so much fucking meth that we were up for 9 days, and we like painted the bathtub red, and I drew this huge like dragon on the side of the fucking wall that's like covering over the over the window, and we gutted the fucking kitchen. This is a rental property, by the way. We just fucking destroyed the house, up for 9 days, no idea what we're doing. For some reason, she got in her head that I was a cop. And now her and her friends are fucking searching the house for bugs because I'm a police officer. I don't know why I would have smoked meth with you for 9 days, and now I'm undercover narcotics agent. And then a few days later, they thought I was a Hell's Angel. They're planted into their house so that I could watch meth trafficking. That one doesn't make any sense. I was like 110 pounds. What fucking 1% club would ever let me be one of them in the condition I was fucking in? Anyway, but in that house, and this is why they were getting so paranoid, is because my buddy Ryan at one point, actually just before I met him, had been abducted by some TS members and tied to a chair, pistol whipped over a fucking girl. And this girl who's now just newly clean, and I'm not gonna say her name, you might see this, hey, you're doing better now, you just got your 1 year, congratulations, that's awesome. But she was running around with these fucking killers and shit like that, and Ryan was trying to like help her out, and things didn't go well, right? Anyway, he's okay now, but he's still a little gone. She's clean, but so there's TS coming in and out of the town and the house, and then it was the same time that Fallen Saints thing was going on with that operation for SETI. So there's some sort of drug distribution coming in and out of the house that, you know, I was too high and not involved in it, but like I was sitting right there, so I mean I see it happening. And then there's these they were saying they were white boy posse, and this is around the time that they were cutting people's heads off and leaving them in the ditches and shit like that. Anyway, just some fucked up people were coming around the house, and I wasn't too all about it at that time, right? But I was also way too flailed out to even fucking care. So anyway, living in this house where they think I'm either a narcotics agent or a biker sent to fucking watch them deal their drugs or whatever, even though I'm using all of them. And one day, my dog ends up getting murdered, killed. I don't know, he died in the backseat of the car as we were taking a tour, right? He just never woke up again. I lost my shit. Like, it was just, I'll tell you a story about Loki another time. He was just such an amazing dog, but he died, right? And it was just shortly after he had died that I had moved out of that house and then started living above the bar. in Humboldt, and that was the first time I ever started slamming opiates. And I started, and then I went through bad withdrawals, and my dog is dead. And I just like I really had to take a look at my life and go, all of these people that I'm now associating with, not that I hadn't associated with that type before, but it's just the consistency. All these bad guys, all of my withdrawals. My dog was just killed for what? So that people could get into our house and steal our shit. And I looked at that and I go, and my daughter doesn't even fucking know who I am, right? So I decided that was the time that I needed to go and get clean. So I called up my parents. They were living in Kelowna at the time, and they flew me out there. I got to Saskatoon, got on a, did I fly or did I bus? I bussed. I got on a bus in Humboldt and Saskatoon, transferred to go to Kelowna, and I tried drying out. I was dried out off drugs there, but kept drinking all their booze. And finally, they flew me back to Regina, and I lived with my friend Ashley for a week and got into detox. And then I've kind of been clean ever since. No, there's a period of time right out of detox before I went to rehab that I was slamming crystal meth, and that got really fucking crazy, and that's another story. But yeah, that started it off. Living in Humboldt, you would think that Vancouver, my time spent on Hastings, would have been the time. No, Humboldt fucked it up. It was just such a weird community. There's actually Monique's clean now. Girl I was saying before, clean now. Lots of people are, well, clean or dead. I mean, really, that's all there is to it. Anyway, that's the story for today. Thanks for listening. Have a good one. Bye.